Last we left off, we had created our primary domain. We are going to create our subdomains in this video. So now that we have our primary domain, if we go to our browser right here, there's Firefox, we have it open. I'm going to go to localhost. You see we have it set up. Now what we did in the last video is we created a path to the folder that we wanted, the directory that we want to serve up pages when we go to our primary domain here, localhost. What we're going to do is create a couple of subdomains. So if we go to sandbox1.localhost, then it will take us to the index or that directory for that subdomain. The same thing for sandbox2. We need to set that up. So we're going to use virtual host, so it's a configuration file in the XAMPP installation in Apache, where we can go ahead and include those in and set those up. So we have already configured our Apache configuration file. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to search for document root. And scrolling down a little bit, we have commented out the default directory. We made our own. Okay, so on our C drive we have created this folder webdev and www, and in there is what pages will be served up. So the virtual host portion of this configuration file is further down the configuration text file. So virtual host, do a couple times, and there we are. Okay, so we see here, right here, that in the Apache configuration file, this line includes another file, and basically include here works like a PHP include would, so that when this configuration file starts up or is loaded, it also loads up this file, which is being pulled in from another location. Now we can get to this file by going to our C drive. Here we have our XAMPP installation, and under Apache and conf, right here we have our Apache configuration file. This one here is one that I created. I just deleted it. It was just kind of like a test, but you won't see that in here. We have in here though our Apache configuration file, and under extra, okay, like it says right here, it says conf, right here, conf, then extra, and then we should find our file, and there we are. I'm going to open that up in a text editor. I'm using Sublime Text 3. So double click that. Here we are. Okay. So this file by default has a bunch of lines commented out, and basically all it is just information to kind of guide you on how to set this up. Then it provides a couple of examples right here. Here is where we're going to bring in or include our subdomains. Now when we do this, the moment we introduce even one subdomain, we're also going to have to include in here now our local host, our primary domain. So when you don't do that, what's going to happen is you're going to see some issues in your browser. When you type in localhost and just go to your primary domain, it can wind up loading up other projects. This is something that I experienced, and it could just be because of the configuration files for that particular project that may be pointing towards localhost, but you want to prevent that. You want each one to have their own unique address. So we set all of them up here. We'll start with our local host. And I've got the code snippets for these. I had already created these, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste it in. Starting with our local host, just by looking at it, you can see that this looks like the ones up here, again, because these are examples that are meant to help you kind of set it up. So I've already done that. Here's our local host, port 80. The main things we're looking at here is going to be our document root. and our server alias and server name. Okay, so we're just kind of stating the obvious here for our server alias localhost, our server name localhost, so that when we type that into the browser, it takes us right here to the document root where the www folder is. Now we're going to go ahead and create our subdomains. And there we are. Okay, so our first one, sandbox1, we've created an alias for it, sandbox1.localhost, sandbox1.localhost, so that when we go to our browser and we type in sandbox1.localhost, it's going to take us to this directory. And it's going to serve up the pages that are inside of this directory, sandbox1. Now, I mentioned this in the first video, but you want to be a bit cautious here and just kind of cover your P's and Q's. If any of the syntax is off, you're going to wind up, for one, getting an error in the browser. It's not going to load up the correct, either subdomain or the correct directory. Any number of things can happen there. Plus, your Apache server, when you stop it and restart it, which is what you have to do after you save any one of these configuration files, is not going to start, and it's going to throw out an error. So you want to make sure that your syntax is intact when you save this file. If you experience any issues, the first place to look at is the syntax and make sure that everything's okay. For example, last time on my second sandbox2 here, because I copied this top part down and just kind of changed a little bit of the information, I missed this, and it said sandbox1, everything else was sandbox2, and that was just enough to kind of throw a few things off, and I had to spend some time troubleshooting. So we have this saved. Okay, so we have all of them in here, our primary, sandbox1, sandbox2. But when I go to the browser, right, first we've got to restart our server. So start, yeah. We're still not going to see it. So if I go to sandbox1.localhost, still server not found. That's because we have to also configure our host file, and that's going to be on your particular machine. In Windows, we're going to find that in Computer, C drive, Windows, System32, drivers, etc. And here's your host file. I already have it loaded up here in my text editor. Okay, and at the bottom I'm going to copy and paste in a code snippet. There we are. Okay, so what we're saying here is identify our local host. Okay, this address 127.0.0.1, if I were to just copy and paste that into our browser, it basically is localhost. Alright, so we're adding our localhost here. It's almost like an alias saying for this address add localhost. We've got our sandbox1.localhost alias and our sandbox2.localhost alias. So now we can save this file. We can go to our sandbox1.localhost. Spell it right. There we are. So it takes us to the directory that we created right here for our subdomain, sandbox1. If we do the same thing for sandbox2, we're going to see the same thing. It takes us to our directory. Here with the host file, when I made that change and saved it, I didn't have to restart the Apache server because this is not a file that is part of the XAMPP installation. This is on your computer. So you don't have to restart Apache when you make the change to the host file. Other than that, this is ready to go. We've got our primary domain and both of our subdomains ready for development. And each one of these can have their own individual project in them, and you can access them through your browser.